This is My Perspective discussion series, where women talk Budo.
There.
Hi,
Yay.
Fran.
Made it.
Hooray, yay.
Lovely to
Good.
see
Good to see you, Fran.
And thanks everyone who's joined us. I can see lots of people are waving at us, which is really nice.
And for this live, what we did, well, basically, it was inspired by International Women's Day. Cathy and I last year did Cathy organized a seminar led by the four senior women students in our dojo. And this year we wanted also to do something to commemorate the date, a bit more focused on reflection and on the experiences that different people have in the mat, particularly women. But we decided to open it to everyone who does martial arts through this survey. And in this survey, the way we're going to use the results from the survey is like to have a conversation, to react to the different results that we got. If you answered the survey, you probably saw that we asked a lot of like characterization questions, like, are you a woman? How old are you? What's your ethnicity? And things like that. And you probably also saw that we asked several questions about your experience, whether you felt any differences in treatment due to gender, or whether you had any interesting anecdotes or positive things that you wanted to share. Reflecting on the experiences of your martial art.
And I'll just add as well, it was open to practitioners from other arts as well. So it wasn't Aikido alone. We had who did we have, Fran? We had judoka, we had people from BJJ as well, which was great.
Obviously, most of the responses were from Aikido because that's the largest number of listeners. 70% of the answers came from Aikidoka. That 70% it's out of 108 responses, which for 1 week in an online survey, it's pretty good.
And Fran, no, because Fran makes surveys for a living, don't you? That's part of your job. I'm sure it's not all that you do, but it's part of your job.
Yes, it's funny because when we launched the survey, Cathy, you asked me like, "Oh, how many responses will we get?" And I said, "Oh, maybe in a week, 100, 150," and we did 108, which was pretty good.
Fantastic.
Awesome. That's great reach.
So, of course, we've got Roo Sensei from Mitsubachi Dojo. Thank you so much again for joining us. Roo actually joined us in season 2. I think it was the first full episode in season 2, and we had a really interesting conversation. And she very, very kindly agreed to come back and talk to us live this time. So we're very, very appreciative.
Pressure's on. Yeah. I'm seeing lots of my friends coming on to the screen, so that's very nice.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Support.
Hello.
Sweet. Hi, Pia. Hi, Hannah. Nice to see you guys. Hi, Yvonne.
Yvonne's there as well. Okay, so I think let's just get straight into the data, should we? So where did we get to? We got to 74% were Aikidoka, and of course we have practitioners from different arts. So most of the people who answered the survey have been practicing for more than 7 years. In fact, exactly 68.5% of people who responded have been practicing for more than 7 years. And we also received some responses from fresh beginners as well. But that was 1.9%. 1.9% were fresh beginners. So we're very appreciative for them filling in the survey.
About the number of beginners. So as Cathy said, most people have been training for over 7 years. More than about 70% of our answers were like senior people in the martial arts. And something I used to feel when I was so I've been doing Aikido for I don't know, about 7 years probably. I would have answered over 7 years in the survey. And something I felt when I was a fresh beginner is that I couldn't give an opinion about Aikido because I hadn't been doing it for enough time to have a sense of what it was like, and I would have loved to get more answers from beginners. I don't know if there's any beginner listening who would like to share a comment, like what made you answer the survey, and also, yeah, like do you also have those thoughts of like, am I worthy enough to give my opinion? Have I been doing this for long enough? I don't know if you had that same experience, Cathy or Roo.
Well, I still have that. I have that feeling now. I mean, I would say I'm still relatively new to practice, but yeah, I feel like that now. That I'm aware that, you know, when we have all these discussions, I'm probably talking well above my pay grade, but you know, someone has to. So yeah. How about you, Roo?
This year is actually my 30th year in Aikido, 2025.
Wow.
So actually around January of 1995 is when I started Aikido, which, you know, in my circle, I'm still junior to a lot of people, I think, of my contemporaries. I'm kind of like a lot of people I know, folks I know, like Mila Naimi Sensei, like Robert Savoca Sensei. They started earlier than I did. So I always feel like, who am I to say this stuff? So I think our imposter syndrome just persists no matter what. Let's just get over it. If you have an opinion, you have a good opinion, and you know, you bring your perspective from your life and what you've seen in the dojo, no matter how long or short you've been in the dojo. So it's all input, it's all intel that we can use, can shape our thoughts. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, should I move on to this pie chart, Fran?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll return to my gestures. So because I'm aware you guys can't see this chart, but we are going to share it after the episode, we'll share it. So we had 106 responses, so only 2 people didn't answer this question. And the question was, have you ever felt that gender influenced how you or others were treated in your main martial art? So pretty much 1/3 of all respondees said, no, I haven't noticed this happening. I think, Fran, we have the figures somewhere, but I do believe that most of those answers came from men, but there were a few women that also responded with that answer. And then we had another third. They're not exactly equal thirds. At 37.7% of people said, yes, I have experienced this personally. And the final third of people said, yes, I have witnessed this happening to other people. So 2/3 of people have either seen or experienced gender influencing how they were treated, and 1/3 said no, they had not noticed. Is any of that a surprise to you, either of you?
You know, I think we have to be real here, right? That we're in a martial art. A martial art is a physical art, and women tend to be smaller and weaker. We don't have the muscle mass that men have. We don't have sometimes the reflexes that men have, although sometimes we do. What we do have is a heightened awareness of where we are. You know, I've seen over and over, women have a heightened martial awareness that men lack because they come in just taking for granted who they are. And women are constantly questioning who they are in relation to what's around them. So I think in any situation where you're studying martial arts, if you're a woman, you're going to approach it differently than you do if you're a man. I think. Maybe not 100% of the time. I'm sure there are outliers, and that's interesting also. But generally speaking, I don't want to pretend that women and men are the same. We're not. And I think we have to accept that. What the problem is equity, you know, where we are valued equally for what we bring in a martial context. And I think that's where the problem comes in, because men, of course, you know, if you have a competition, you're going to have a weight class, and, you know, we're always going to be outweighed by men, right? So where am I going with this? Do you take my point, though? I don't want to just be like, we need to be treated the same. We need to be treated the same. No, we don't need to be treated the same. I don't treat my female students the same as I treat my male students. However, I have the same high expectations of both, you know, and I believe both are capable of great Aikido, great Iaido.
Yeah.
It just looks different.
Yeah. 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 It's two things. I love the point about hyper awareness in spaces, and I think that's sort of linked to, like, this is not something that happens only in martial arts. We know that. So every time, and we have statistics and we have data that explains that women have to prove themselves in most of the spaces. Like, even if they have the qualifications, even if they have their degree or that they need or the experience, they still have to demonstrate others, whatever social space they're existing in, that they can be as good as a man, not even as good as the best person who could be a man or a woman, as good as a man. So that's sort of, you enter a space and you have that pressure there, especially spaces where have 2 or 3 women and are mostly men. You feel that pressure that you have to be super good. So that's yeah, I completely agree with that bit. On the other hand, you have we're different. We're our bodies are built different. Some women will be pretty similar to some men. Sometimes will be completely different. And it's that uh, what I appreciate from teachers, particularly that sort of are aware of these differences, is when they don't, when they keep the high expectations, but they don't use like stereotypes of gender, like they essential, like women are like this, so they should be like that. When they do that, then you lose all the potential that the person could have. And I think when teachers have these standards and say, okay, how do I make this student to go from where they are to this standard, regardless of their gender and many other characteristics, but our focus today is gender.
Yeah.
I got excited and I started shaking my tripod.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, what it comes down to is, as teachers, we have to encounter every student as a human being, first and foremost, you know, and that can be a difficult thing to get over your own preconceptions, and it's an ego problem sometimes too, right? You want to feel like you don't have to take the time to, you know, we're all guilty of it. I suppose I've pigeonholed people plenty of times. Pigeonholed? Yeah, that's the word, right? Like you're like, oh, you're like this, and you put them in this box, and then later you're working with them, and you're like, oh shit, I was completely wrong about this person. Like, you know, whatever your assumption was. So I think as instructors and also as fellow students, we have to be really careful to just and Aikido is particularly fertile ground for this. I feel, just because of its non-competitive aspect, not the non-competitive nature of Aikido. It's like a trap, but it's also a gift, because we can really see the way we work together. We can, as I was saying, I think in the last time we talked, you know, just like in tea ceremony, you're encountering this other human being, and yeah, if you're open to it, you can meet on that level.
Yeah.
We have we actually we had it broken down. So we also asked the question, how has gender influenced how you or others were treated? And probably the largest proportion was being underestimated by training partners. That was the biggest one. And to me, that's not a surprise. And my guess is for you guys, it's not a surprise either. Because that's something that I've experienced, and that's something that I know other women have experienced as well. So that was the biggest one. The other, what was another large one? So 19% was different expectations from instructors, which is kind of what we've just been talking about. And another fairly large, sizable group, 18%, was experiencing harassment or inappropriate behavior. And then we also had 14% saying, what is it? Unequal training opportunities. But it was noticeable that the largest one was being underestimated by training partners. And it's also worth remembering that this is not just Aikidoka We actually have, perhaps it's a good point to share a couple of anecdotes. So there is one from someone in kickboxing. So people in kickboxing not wanting to go too hard on me because I'm a girl, and compliments on my strength as being strong for a girl. But then there's another one that kind of ties in with this one as well. And let me just find it. So we're paraphrasing this. These are not the exact words, but it's basically what they said. A male training partner taunted me to hit him harder. When I finally did, he got really upset and went to complain to the coach. So yeah, this is not just Aikido, but bearing in mind that obviously most of our respondents were Aikidoka. I mean, Roo Sensei, of course, being the most experienced out of all of us. My question to you, if you don't mind. So I found this when I was quite junior, going to seminars, and I also and I had this thing in my head of like, okay, but I am junior, so maybe it's that. But then I noticed that as I got more experience and more advanced, it doesn't actually stop and it doesn't actually go away. What's your experience of this, if you don't mind sharing?
I could tell you a lot of stories. The one that came to mind when I was reading these results was the very first time I set foot on the mat at Hombu Dojo. So I had been training with Chiba Sensei in San Diego for 5 years, I suppose. Yeah. And then my ex-partner and I moved to Japan, and he had also been training with Chiba Sensei. And he, you know him, I don't want to drop names here, but he's a very, very skilled martial artist, very skilled Aikidoist. I mean, technically amazing, and an imposing person, you know, like he steps in the room and you notice. And back then that was what, 20 years ago. So I had been in San Diego and been kind of a big fish in a small pond, and then coming to Japan was a struggle for me in a lot of ways. Just coming into that culture as a woman, as an older woman. I was 35, 34 when we moved there. And so, you know, I was already feeling very small. And the very first practice we made it to at Hombu was the Wednesday night class with Miyamoto Sensei, and he taught, you know, first class and second class. And everyone was scrambling to train with Manolo, and I was just kind of in the back trying to find a partner, you know. And oh shit, I dropped his name. Sorry, Lolo. Forgive me. Anyway, with that guy, that famous guy. And so there was a half-hour break between classes. There was at Hombu, and some people were standing around, people we knew from various places, and then various followers of Miyamoto Sensei. And there was this guy who was like, oh, I can't find a partner and no one will train with me. I'm so frustrated. And I said, I'll train with you, man. I don't mind. Because you choose a partner, you know, you keep the same partner for those classes. Yeah. And he looked at me and said, no, I want a challenge. And I was like, whoa, well, fuck you. I mean, sorry, This is a family podcast, right? But it was just like straight in my face, like, you are not a challenge. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. You know, yeah, it was like being slapped. It was really, that was hard to take. It was hard to take. And that was the beginning of a lot of experiences at Hombu that eventually led me to start training in karate, because I wanted to punch people all the time, and you just can't be punching people at Hombu Dojo. So yeah.
And so how did it feel when you then made the change into I don't know, did you continue your Aikido training and then practice karate alongside it, or it was simultaneous? Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
So it was simultaneous.
When I was in Japan, I had this crazy schedule. I don't know how I did it, like all of my 30s, you know, from when we moved there, but I was doing Aikido and Iaido 3 times a week. And so sometimes I would do Aikido in the morning and Iaido at night. And then sometimes I would do Aikido in the morning and karate at night. And sometimes I would do Aikido. Just Sundays, I would just do Aikido. I would go to Doshu's class and Kanazawa Sensei's class. And then Saturdays was always tea ceremony. But sometimes I could go, Miyamoto Sensei had a weapons class that was near my tea class that I could go do weapons there. So I was, you know, really stretching myself thin, which is probably why my body gave out after 5, 6, 7 years of that.
Right.
But yeah, karate, it was very interesting. I mean, I don't know how far we want to go, just get right into this,
No,
but
why not?
at
Because
home,
I was just thinking. I mean, we did have answers from karateka, and I was curious to know, how did your experience differ when you went and practiced karate, or not? Maybe it didn't differ at
it
all.
was it was very different. It was very different. I was practicing at the Shotokan Hombu Dojo in Iidabashi. And I had an introduction, so it was an Aikido friend actually introduced me there, which was very nice. So I came in. They have women on their teaching staff. They elevate their women who are successful in competition.
Mm.
There's a women's class, as there is at Hombu Dojo, but the women's Aikido class in Hombu Dojo is not a class. It was taught by men. Women were not used for ukemi. You
Really?
basically, yeah,
Wow.
no, it was, yeah, I went once and never went again.
I did not
I mean,
know that. I was aware there was a women's class, but I didn't realize that was the case. I was also aware that it's taught by men, but that's surprising.
they took, at least when I was there, it may have changed, but when I was there, they brought a male deshi in to take all the ukemi because the women clearly couldn't handle it. So I never went back to there, but there was a women's class at the karate dojo. Takahashi Sensei taught it on Tuesday nights. And so the dojo was divided. The women would be in the front and the men would be in the back. No, the men were in the front and the women were in the back with Takahashi Sensei, and the men, I forget who was teaching. But it was such a tough class that sometimes you'd catch the men looking back there and being like, oh, thank God I'm not having to do that. It was like, he made us, it was a hard class. He pushed us all to the limit. And I felt like, yeah, that's the kind of women's class I want to be in, was somebody who really, has high expectations. And that was a really fulfilling experience. And yeah, in karate again, like, you're different. Yeah, you're not a man. You're like, I can't do shiai with men, right? They punch harder, they move faster, they're bigger. But I felt, at least there, and it also, I didn't bring any baggage. No one knew whose student I was. No one knew I had a high rank in another martial art. It was just, I came in, I was a white belt. So I could start completely fresh. And I felt like nobody had any preconceptions about me. And that was really like, get that experience if you can. I had it again in boxing when I returned to the US. I came in like, I don't know what I'm doing. Show me how to punch things, in a different way, because the way they punch in boxing is very different than the way they punch in karate. And they don't kick, and it's the ring is different. It's all, so it's such a gift to be a beginner again, because you feel like people really see you for who you are. And I feel like I never got that at Hombu Dojo from the moment I stepped on the mat there.
And
Not
so
to dog Hombu. That made me what I am. I found my family, and I found people who did really respect me for who I am, but it took time.
Yeah. How did you deal with that guy who said that? Was it just you had to let it go and carry on?
I never trained with him. I never let him bow into me again. I was like, you're dead to me. You're dead to me. And he's, whatever. He went off and did his thing. Very, whatever. I'm still mad about it, obviously, because I haven't forgotten about it. But what just shitty thing to say someone. I mean, why not say no thanks? Yeah. But no, I want a challenge. Like, okay. So, but I mean, blessings on him, because then I made it my mission to become a challenge to people like that. So he did me a favor. So thank you very much, nameless person. Because, yeah.
I was thinking that, again, going back to the first question, like the different amounts of years that people have been training. Like when you went there, you had already like a good amount of experience. You weren't a fresh beginner going there. But what happens if a fresh beginner gets that comment, like, I want to challenge? It's like you've already, like, they don't know, basically. They don't have to know what's the etiquette yet, or what's to be accepted from more experienced people. That you're learning that, and maybe you never end finish learning that, but you're very, 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 very fresh. So yeah, for people who are listening, like, be careful to what you say to beginners. An answer like can be very demotivated. And then you see dojos asking themselves, like, particularly in Aikido, like, how can we bring more new people? How can we bring younger people? Well, like, don't make them feel like shit in the first day or the first moment.
Yeah.
There's also the other side of this. So there is this, of course, a big section of the response was being underestimated. There were also some responses from a few men that said women don't always appreciate hard training, or they don't, or I can't throw them that hard. You know, I wouldn't throw them as hard as I would throw a guy. Okay, fair enough. But they're basically saying they have this dilemma because you know, oh, I want to train hard with the women, but they don't like it. And I find that interesting because for me, it sounds like they are equating hard training with good or quality training, which it isn't always, because I've trained with some people myself in other seminars and stuff, and they've been very rough and very strong, but I wouldn't say it was good. And I think it also emphasizes, so to me, I feel like it demonstrates that this kind of comment of like, oh, but I can't throw women hard, like women can't train hard. To me, it kind of demonstrates a lack of skill on the part of the nage, because it's like they lack this sensitivity. And I think it also puts all the emphasis on the throw or on the application. It's like the Aikido is the throw. What about everything leading up to that? What about the
That's exactly. Aikido is kuzushi. Come on, like where you end up is just that's not the point. Can you take their balance? Can you take it immediately? Can you take it without using your muscles? Can you take it with correct footwork? Can you put them where you want to put them? Can you make them take effortless ukemi? That's my goal. And when you're working with someone who's really skilled, like my body is crap. I'm held together with bits of string at this point, basically 2 fake hips. My shoulders are bad. My neck doesn't work. You know, it's like, but there are people I can work with, very skilled people. I remember one Burenkai summer camp where it was before my first hip surgery and I was in so much pain. And there were some people I was training with who were, as you say, just like pounding me into the mat. And then I remember grabbing Philip Vargas Shihan. He's now Shihan, or going to be Shihan, for training. And he's amazing Aikido. And I felt better after that 15 minutes of training than I felt after training with, you know, softer people. If someone can throw you really well, the ukemi is effortless, and that's what we should be going for. Is how can you take their balance and let them fall like a leaf instead of trying to drive them like a cement mixer, you know? And that's martial art, you know. Look at people. If you're using a sword, the more muscle you put in, the less you cut. I'm sorry, you have to learn how to just get perfect alignment, perfect timing. Then you can cut. So it's the same. So yeah, your point is exactly right, I think.
I remember when I was in Kyoto, Okamoto Sensei said something interesting. She said, when the first time you meet someone, the first, I think she said, this might not be an exact quote, but she said something like the first 4 exchanges are just saying hello. So you're just meeting the person, you're just meeting your partner. And then the point was that then you take it from there, right? So you don't make the presumption of their skill level or how the person feels or how you train immediately. You know, the first 4 are when you can assess it, and then after that you can hopefully. It is difficult, I think, that if you're, and to be fair, if you're not that experienced, you can't always feel how much the other person can take. Like I know that there are like some beginners that we know, for example, they're very strong. And as we said, strength doesn't always equate to skill, and so they're often a bit afraid of how how much they can put into something, or they or they overdo it. So it can be very, very powerful. So to be fair, but again, it goes back to my thing of like, it for me, it does demonstrate a lack of sensitivity. And so if you're someone that is quite experienced and you're saying things like that, just a blanket, oh, you can't throw women hard. I mean, there are men that I can't train with as hard as I can train with Fran, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so it's
So
on a
this is
basis.
this is just martial. This is just like a martial thing. Like when you're in the boxing ring, if you make any assumptions about who you're fighting, assume you have to be absolutely present. And I actually love sparring with people who think I'm weak because they don't know what I have, and I can always take them. I can always take them. It's timing. It's not speed. It's timing. It's body position. And I can look at how they're moving, and I can position my body, and I can, get at least one good strike in. I mean, I don't do that much anymore, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not a good martial artist if you're making assumptions about the person about your partner or your opponent. That's just being not a good martial artist. You just have to be solid in yourself and take whatever's around you as training, whether it's a dead beginner or a very senior person. And I would say for beginners, in a seminar situation, often people just are like, oh, I just want to train with Hakama people. And I tell you, I've had much better training with white belts sometimes in some seminars than with people wearing Hakamas, because again, like, it doesn't mean it. So you got to pair pants on. So somebody gave you a rank, that says really very little about how you train in the day-to-day. So if you're in that situation and you're looking around wondering who you should have for your next partner, look at how they train with other people. Look if other people are enjoying their training. Go to the people who are enjoying, who look like they're having a good time, and train with those people. Don't people who are making a big dust up on the mat, just let them be. They're just getting their aggression out. I don't know. And we've all done it. I was a complete asshole back in the day. But yeah, don't make the same mistake.
Fran, did you want to, because we of course, I wasn't only being underestimated, we had some different examples. Did you want to share any of these? I feel like you probably have them to hand more quickly than I do.
Yeah, I'm going to look to the side, but it's because I have this screen with the different experiences. But for example, just and as Cathy said, that these are like some of the quotes that people shared have been paraphrased to like get the best idea of what they were saying. So one person shared, many times I noticed that people, mostly men, even more inexperienced than me, were surprised that I was able to successfully perform techniques on them, especially those that involved throwing and projections. And then maybe, well, it's basically reflecting what you've just explained, that sort of surprise when someone that you've made assumptions about completely does something completely different.
I've had that
to what you were.
so many times. I've had that so many times, and I've had that and it's always external seminars. It's not in our dojo, of course, because we know one another, but it's always in external dojos. And it's funny that most of these anecdotes, they tend to start with at seminars, so it's with people that don't know you. And of course, another way this manifests is like constantly being taught by your training partner. So women frequently receive corrections from lower ranked or equally ranked men, often when unnecessary. And this can also take the form of basically teaching over the teacher, because they're not the teacher. But yeah, so that those came up a lot. Being taught.
One of the quotes that maybe we'll all roll our eyes, because probably we've all had that. So here's a quote. I once trained with a man who kept trying to correct my movements. When the teacher came over, he confirmed that the man was doing it wrong. But as soon as the teacher walked away, he went right back to doing it incorrectly. So it's like frustrating. And maybe I'm going to like so. For example, in my case, I doubt myself a lot. Like it takes me a long time to get out of that imposter syndrome and feel that okay, I know how to do this. I know the basic framework for this technique. I can do it decently, and I know what are the bits I need to work on. See how long I'm taking to describe how confident. Like it takes me ages to to accept that I know I've learned something and so on. So then you have this more experienced person that tells you you're doing it wrong, and you're like, am I doing it wrong? Am I not? And then a third person comes, and you're right, and you feel that relief, like, oh yes, I was doing what was being asked of me. It's not my problem. I have to continue improving on my stuff. But the fact that the other person is so like close to any type of like communication or being able to receive what's been given to them, it's yeah, like it doesn't help this sort of um, I don't know, growing together, especially in Aikido, that you train, you perform all the katas, you do them in pairs. It's like being stuck for not listening to your teacher. And you know that the basic thing you have to do is watching and listening to your teacher. So yeah, I don't
You
know.
know, I mean, I've experienced this many times, and you have a number of possible responses, right? You could say, "Hey, did you hear what the instructor just said?" You could deal with it verbally, which, you can, but what I prefer to do is to use it as an opportunity to practice ukemi. Like to really like, I don't, is this technique working? So when you're working with someone, like if they're doing it wrong and it's not effective, one strategy is to try to figure out the openings and think to yourself, how would I reverse this person? Where's the opening? I mean, you can make anything into study. And I have had so much practice making crappy partners into good training. Like, I mean, no offense. I have also training from great partners, but it's inevitable in Aikido. You're going to have partners who aren't great. And at this point, like what I'm really working on is just to take any person who wants to come train with me, I'll train with them, and I'll try to get something out of it, whether it's taking the softest, least impact ukemi I can, or figuring out where the opening is, figuring out, okay, what are they doing that's not working? And then trying to fix it in myself. I'm not going to try to fix it in them because they're clearly beyond hope and they're just going to bumble their way to wherever they're going. But I can use the time. Don't let anyone waste your time. That's what I would say. Even in a situation like this, don't. Then you really do lose. But if you can find a way to make that practice fruitful, and there's always a way to make that practice fruitful, unless you're at personal risk. If you feel unsafe, then I think we need to also really encourage people, if they feel unsafe, to just sit down. Just sit down and say, I'm not going to train with you. And that's no questions, no discussion. I'm not going to train with you. Because part of the reason my body doesn't work well anymore is because I didn't know that I could do that. And I really want to develop this culture of, if you're physically unsafe, if you're working with someone who's twice your weight and they're not being respectful of your body and what you're giving them as an uke, sit down, because that's a lesson for them too. Sit down and say, I will train with someone who treats me like a human being. That's it. End of story. It makes me
And I think
so mad. I hate bullies.
that goes for men as well, I think, and boys, younger boys that are trained, to know that they have that. But in some ways, maybe it's more difficult for them to do that. I think for women, we probably have this thing inside of we need to prove that we're worthy of being on the mat with the guys. I think sometimes, in fact, we an anecdote here. This is an example from BJJ. So about violent responses to a woman being skillful. So, and it can involve escalating force beyond reasonable intensity. And so she said, I went to roll with a guy, a big fella from a different gym who was picking off women only. When he realized I wasn't an easy target, he turned nasty and spent the rest of the round pushing his elbow into my neck and jaw. And I think that there can, at least, I don't want to generalize. This is my experience. Like I've witnessed this, where sometimes the attitude can be a bit like, oh, you want to play with the boys? You've got to train like the boys as well. And then it can get really rough and really really strong and way more than you can handle. And I guess in that situation, and then that's when you would need to say, okay, I'm just not going to train.
Where's the instructor? Where's the instructor? That's my question. Like in a healthy dojo environment, the instructor would be picking up on that, I think, and either come over and crush that guy with a very clear message, like, is that what you like to do? Like, how is this man allowed to go around picking women off anyway? I would say look for a different dojo, look for a different place to train, because that place is not so good in my opinion. But it, this happens. I spent 5 months traveling. I think I started in Japan, and then I went across, the story, through China, and then across Russia, and then Poland, and then into Europe, and I ended up actually in Great Britain. And there was one dojo in Europe, and I didn't have a hakama with me, so I was training as a white belt. And there was one dojo in Europe where this guy who was, I guess he was wearing a brown belt. He wasn't a hakama either. So I was just like looking for good training, and I bowed into him, and we were doing Sankyo, I think. And it was very quickly apparent that I was not a white belt, which, I've been yelled at for doing that, and maybe don't do that, maybe that's a bad idea. But I was just like, let's see what I got, I'll train without a hakama, see how people take me. And I will tell you, in Asia, it was great. Nobody, they knew immediately, right, that what was going on. But in Europe, people started, I started getting different responses. It was very interesting. And in this particular dojo, this guy, we were doing Sankyo, and I was doing Sankyo, slightly different from how I usually do it, but it was what the instructor had shown. And this guy starts trying to hurt me, like trying to bar my arm. And like, if I hadn't known what I was doing, he could have really hurt me. And so after 2 times of that, I got his back and started choking him out. And then he turned around and it got into a fist fight. It was not my best moment. Okay. I don't recommend this. It was not a good, and I quickly disengaged. I was like, I'm a guest in this dojo. This is not appropriate. But I was really pissed off. I was like, who are you treating a guest like this? It was very strange. Anyway, those kinds of things happen.
Yeah.
And it's not great. But it just, I feel still like I didn't cover myself in any glory just doing what I did. That wasn't a good response either. So that's why I've kind of concluded, like, just disengage. Disengage. Makes them look worse than you.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult in the moment, isn't it? When because one of the things I discovered about myself through my Aikido practice is like, man, I can get really angry. Like, I didn't realize I had this like fire in me. And so I guess when you're in the moment, it's kind of responding in the right way in the moment, when you've got this heat rising, which is not always easy to do. And I think in some cases it's forgivable if it's something that you're having to constantly deal with all the time. It's like at some point, I don't know. It's kind of understandable, I think. I'm just having a look through our so it's very easy to go off on a tangent with these things, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's when it's like you take it and you take it and you take it, and someone just crosses that line, you're like, I'm gonna end you, buddy. I'm gonna end you because I can. And it feels so good, but afterwards, I tell you, real fight I've been in where I was hurting someone, it doesn't feel good. And it shouldn't feel good. It shouldn't. We have to figure out. I mean, that's the whole point of doing Aikido, right? Is so we don't resolve things that way. So I really feel like that day was, you know, I failed my training. That was a big, like, that was not Aikido, what I was doing. And so, okay, let's do better. Come on, do better. So, yeah, as fun as it is to talk about it, it's not good. It's not, that's not what we're doing in Aikido. That's not, we're not about beating people up or winning.
Yeah.
The point about the instructor, I think it's super important. That's something I am learning, like, to be more aware of what's happening around me, and like picking up the vibes of the different pairs that are training, because of course, if I feel frustrating when I am training and so on, like, yeah, obviously I notice that, or I obviously notice sort of the vibes of my partner, but then the next level is like feeling it around you. And then when you're a teacher, of course, you have this oversight of the whole class, but then you go one by one and so on. And it's this, you're like the moderator, you are the example, you are the, and this goes for gender inequalities as well. Like, if you are a teacher who prioritizes only male students for presentations, only those who are forceful and overuse strength and muscle in their techniques, you prioritize those, then that's the example you're setting. And then the standard, whatever standard you want to put, people won't reach it, because you've already made it for a subset of people and not everyone in your group. So I think the responsibility of the instructor is not just showing the beautiful or like good technique, effective technique. It's also like keeping this eye supervision on the other things that are happening during training.
And I suppose creating the culture in the dojo.
Yeah, exactly where, and we were saying when so that people feel empowered to say, I'll disengage, I don't feel like, I don't want to train with you. Or when someone sees something that's wrong, like going after the class and talking to that person, like, hey, why did you treat that beginner like that? Like, that's not right. Because you feel you have the power to do that, because that has been cultivated by the teacher and of the seniors and the culture, as you say. So yeah, it's very, very important.
I think, thinking about it, you know, this is a criticism that has been leveled at my teacher at San Diego Aikikai. There's a lot of people who say, you know, that was like an elite club. You know, he would only use you for ukemi if you were really good. And yeah, to some extent that was true. But he gave every one of his students what he could. But when you're demonstrating a technique, you need to demonstrate it as clearly as you can. So you need to do it on someone that can move well. So that's kind of the difficult thing, is like, in my dojo's small enough, luckily, that I just grab everybody. I demonstrate a technique. I start with the most senior person. I go to the most junior person. I do it on all of them. That way they can all see it. They can see how to do it with each other. They can see, you know, and then I'll take ukemi. But I have 6 people in class. When you have 20 people in class, you can't do that, right? You have to be efficient. You have to show the technique and show it as clearly as you can. And also, when you get older, I can't be showing technique with guys who are 3 times my size. You know, it's too much on my body. I have to have somebody who's, you know, maybe 20% bigger than me, not 50%. So there's that too. So it's like this. I don't know. I have all kinds of feelings about this ukemi game, like who you use for ukemi, and you know what it says about you is all it says is that you're young and flexible and you take good ukemi. But for me, like at this point, satisfying training is like, who can I really connect with and have a good. It's not necessarily the people who move well. For me, it's different. So I think, yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
I think we covered pretty well, like being underestimated, the unsolicited advice, teaching over the teacher. Like we covered things like that, but I think we haven't covered the body itself, like inappropriate comments about your partner's body, especially given all the pressure that exists over women's bodies as well. I remember one of the quotes we received was someone, like a woman student, who said that her sensei kept making comments about her body in front of everyone when she was called for ukemi. And yeah, like what do you do with that? It's you're not an equal to your teacher in that situation, and you have all those tensions crossing over, right? Because they're not talking they're talking about your body and your body, you have it in the mat and outside the mat. So yeah, I don't know. Personally, well, we could go on and on about receiving inappropriate comments about our bodies, but in my personal experience, it's something that I'm like very, very, very sensitive with, and I I've encountered some people that have sort of this idea that there's like an ideal body for a certain martial art, and of course your body develops depending on the discipline you practice, and your body will change and evolve. But there's always this view of something that is a stereotype basically, but it's going back to the like women are like this, men are like this, the body of this martial art is like this, and again there's this closure to the possibilities. Like, yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts. I
think the fact that we practice Japanese martial arts, I mean, I don't know about other Asian martial arts, but in Japan, there's a very strong culture of fat shaming that really pisses me off. And, you know, especially for a culture that celebrates sumo, but, you know, in which large bodies are ideal. But I have seen, especially in Iaido, for some reason, like, if you're big in Iaido in Japan, you will not get past a certain point. It's terrible. You can't get past 6 dan, right, if you're fat. And I think that that's like ridiculous. At least, okay, again, in my experience, in my organization. And I have seen over and over, I have a good friend who, she's not fat, but she doesn't have a, you know, an hourglass. She's not thin. And people constantly underestimate her. She's a fantastic teacher, and her Iaido is like top notch. But all they can see is, you know, her shape. And it's just, again, we're back to like, wow, that's really not a sign. You're not a good martial artist if that's what you're looking at. You should be looking at, how is that body moving? How fast can it come at me? With how much mass? You know, I don't know. And I'm lucky because I've always, you know, I have a pretty unremarkable body. It's solid. It's, you know, it's not fat. It's not thin. I don't have a big chest. You know, there's nothing that's really made it stand out. So I'm lucky, but I do have friends who struggle, like in Iaido. Frankly, if you have a big chest, it's really hard to cut in the way that they want you to cut, because you've got stuff here that's like your arms are in the, you know, things like that. And so how do we, so I work with my female students on like, okay, what kind of shapewear can we use that'll let your arms work properly? Like, let's work with your body so we can, and then I feel bad about it because I'm like, I'm trying to change your body to conform to the art, where really you should be able to conform the art to your body. But I guess that's a whole other discussion. But if you're getting comments about your body from a teacher, like, find a different teacher, I don't know, or talk to them. That just seems so inappropriate to me, and like such, like that teacher is not seeing things correctly. That's just my opinion. But like, no, I mean, there are people who come into martial arts because they're overweight and they want to lose weight. How do you support that? not tear it down, not tear them down and say, oh, you're not gonna, you're never gonna make it because you're 20 pounds overweight, 50 pounds overweight. I'm like, no, how can I teach you to roll in a way that will not make you feel like you're suffocating? And that's my challenge as a teacher. That's not on that student. I need to figure out how to work with them. Yeah.
There's also so exactly, there's like how the movement in the art works, and how just parts of your body might not interact with it in an ideal way, and you have to find a way there. But there's also, for women's body specifically, we have a quote that says, when I was about 13, I had a very old-fashioned teacher who insisted paired practice should not happen between the other students and me being the only girl in class. And there's also that, again, essentialism or something about women's bodies that it's, I don't know, I went to a mixed school and all that, so I didn't experience anything like that, but it's why the reaction is like, why am I being put in this unfair situation with something that I didn't choose? Like, I just was born like that, and I don't know, like, be a teacher, like. Don't make it weird for me as a 13-year-old. Like, I imagine, maybe, I don't know, I imagine when maybe this happened, for sure this happens to many women, that as your body changes, as you grow as a woman, you realize you're a woman. And you don't want people making it weird for you. On the contrary, like, so that's also, I'm calling it teachers. Be better. Don't make it
better. Really do better. There is, in Japan, I think one of the most senior Aikido practitioners in Japan does a demonstration at the All Japan Aikido demonstration every year. And his Aikido, of course, is amazing. And he uses men for ukemi. And then I remember one year I was watching, and he did call up a woman for ukemi. And it was like a dance. It was so offensive to me because he didn't throw her. He just like danced with her. And I was like, this is not equity, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he was like, well, women's bodies are different than men's bodies. And this was how he, viewed it, was like, oh, you can't throw women. But really? Like, I don't know.
I'm going to jump into a question because so much of the stuff you're saying is related to questions that we've had for you, and this is regarding women's bodies. And so this question is, so your teacher, or at least your main Aikido teacher, was Chiba Sensei, and Chiba Sensei is known for having been extremely skillful and extremely strong and powerful. This is a question. And did you ever find that applying techniques in the same way as Chiba Sensei showed did not work for your own body? And if so, how did you navigate this? Did you have to adapt or find your own way of applying certain techniques that worked for you?
This is a great question, I think. One of the reasons Chiba Sensei was so amazing is that his technique worked. Like it would work. He showed it in a way that would work. If you did the technique the way he did it, it would work. But in that dojo, we also had Murashige Sensei, who was the assistant instructor, Murashige Morihiko, exactly my size. In fact, he was like 10 pounds lighter than I was. And his technique was very different from Chiba Sensei's. And that was why Chiba Sensei wanted him to be the assistant instructor, was because he did things differently. And I stole a lot from Murashige Sensei. I would say he really influenced my technique. Of course, on tests, you do technique the way Chiba Sensei does it. But if you need to move someone in practice, I have tricks that I got from Murashige Sensei. I have tricks that I learned at Hombu Dojo. There were some great, what's his name? Masuda Sensei, who's like he looks like the Japanese Rutger Hauer. I think he's retired now, but he was like this little stocky guy. He used to be a power lifter, one of the older teachers at Hombu. And he had some great little just tricks. Like, I still do Shihonage the way he did, because it would take their balance without, you didn't have to use force. Chiba Sensei was, he was more, I think if you really looked at his technique, he was more scary than forceful. But he had a very forceful presence that made it feel forceful. But in reality, I mean, not all the time. He could crush you. His Nikkyo, like, you couldn't hold a beer for a week. But at the same time, to answer the question clearly, yes, I find, especially Shihonage, Iriminage, applying techniques the way Chiba Sensei showed me was not the best for my body. And especially taking ukemi the way Chiba Sensei wanted me to take ukemi, that left me with a back injury and 2 bad hips. So I've really had to adapt that and understand the principle behind his ukemi and try to reach that same principle in my own body in a different way. So I would say more with ukemi than technique. His ukemi was very demanding. He wants you to be connected like all the way through. And how do you do this without, I tore ligaments in my back. It's very difficult, but I think now I understand what he was looking for in ukemi, and I figured out a way that I could do it. And now he's gone, so I can't check with him, but it works for me. So
It's interesting.
yeah, that's the main adaptation.
I like what you're saying about how, you were also influenced by the way that Murashiga Sensei did things. Like, I feel similarly in the sense that, like, the biggest portion of the Aikido that I know is from my teacher, Ismail Hassan. But I also feel that when I've been to other teachers for, I don't know, just a seminar or like a longer period of time, that you start to build up, and not only teachers, to be fair, but also training partners and other people that you've trained with. You kind of, I feel like I'm building this catalog in my body, and so it's interesting to then. Sometimes I don't actively think, oh, I'm going to try it this way, but it comes out. Something comes out when I need it, and I find that so interesting. Yeah, so I don't know. I just really related to what you're saying there about, of course, most of what you see of me is from my teacher, but there are these nuggets from other people.
Well, I mean, it's like you have a toolbox, right? And the longer you practice, the bigger your toolbox is. And you don't ever, if you have a tool that works, don't throw it away. But that's not always the best tool for the situation you're in. And so the more tools you can collect, you collect tools from everyone. And that's why we practice with different people. And that's why we look at different arts. And and then you have all these tools in your toolbox. And when you need this one, it'll come to hand. And you don't, if you practice well, you don't have to think about it. Your body will adapt. You trust it.
Super interesting.
Let's continue.
Sorry, Fran?
That we can continue with the question.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So you were also talking about what was it? You were talking about your Iaido. And there was a question from a Iaido practitioner, and the question is, this is interesting, and I suppose they were talking about Iaido, but I suppose it could be anything really. This is a tricky one. How does one know when they've mastered the art and can begin expressing the art or style in their own way? And how does one balance what is transmitted and begin self-expression? And then in brackets it says, especially when there are multiple opinions of senseis of the same rank in the same dojo. But I guess the main thing of the question is how do you know when, like, you've got it and then you can start expressing it in your own way?
I think this the obvious answer to this is shuhari, like the pedagogy of shuhari in Japanese, all Japanese arts. Shu is you're copying your teacher exactly. And really, you should only have one teacher. You can't have more than one teacher. You have that teacher and you copy them, and that is the basis of your form. And it doesn't really matter if that teacher is Yamada Sensei or Chiba Sensei or Kanai Sensei. They do things very differently, but your shu is your teacher's shu. So that's what you always go back to. Ha is this is when you start collecting your different tools. Like you know the tools you have in your hand.
Could you repeat that? You froze there. So you said ha is, and then we lost
you.
Oh,
so that's when you start collecting different tools. You say, okay, I have this tool, but maybe it doesn't work for me all the time. So I'm going to look around and find a different tool to do shihonage with when I'm working with someone who's taller than me, say, or shorter than me. And so it translates, I think, as breaking. Like you're kind of breaking away from shu, or you're finding things that are different from shu, from your basic. And then ri is that stage you get to where you don't have to think about which tool you're using. It just comes out. And that sometimes is translated as mastery. But I don't think we ever achieve, like, what is mastery? Like this concept is so Western, the concept of mastery. You're never finished. You're never finished. It's an onion that you just keep peeling layers off of you never get to the center. If the center is mastery, you're never going to get there. You just refine and refine and refine and go back to the beginning. Oh, yeah. And then you find new things in shu. And then you find new things in ha. And then you really gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I find this concept of mastery strange, but expressing the art and style in your own way, you will know when you're doing it. You will know. And for me, it didn't happen until like 2 years ago to really have my own art. And I had this revelation that the way I had become moving in Iaido was how I needed to move in Aikido. And suddenly I had a whole new way of generating power and relating to my partner in a very direct way with the sword that I hadn't really understood before. Like I'm using a sword so now if I'm using a jo, a bokken, a sword, a person, it's all the same. Like I get, you talk about in the beginning, like beginners don't feel like they should know what they're talking about. Like after 30 years, you get to the point where you're like, I don't know if I really can say anything definitive. I mean, you like it's not that you doubt yourself, but it's like there's so many possibilities. You can't give a firm answer. So you keep looking, keep working. That's why we have shugyo. Don't ever look for don't ever think, oh, I'm going to get there. It's like the mountain that's always over the next horizon. You have to just keep walking there. And that's why you go to the dojo every day and you work. That's it. If you're looking for something else, you're kidding yourself, as far as I'm concerned.
We have a comment here from Ivan Mello. And he says, yesterday at the Iaido seminar, because as I mentioned to you before we had this call, we had a Iaido seminar yesterday in our dojo. And yesterday at the Iaido seminar, I was really enjoying Iwanami and Shohato, rediscovering them again. And I think I've used this quote before, and it's a T.S. Eliot quote. And I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to reel it off the top of my head. It might be slightly wrong, but it's, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to return where we started and know the place for the first time.
Know the place for the first time. Yes, exactly. And that is Shoshin, right? That's beginner's mind. Exactly, beginner's mind. Yeah. And I've been rejiggering Ikkyo. Like every time I do Ikkyo now, I know how to do Ikkyo. Now I understand it totally differently. When do you execute? When do you turn the hips? When do you cut down? Now it's very clear to me. Like, oh, this has to happen before I can do it. Whereas before it was just like, I just have to get their elbow down and, No. You, as soon as you have the back foot up, that's when you rotate your hips and then you take the lever. I don't know. It's like now my understanding of Ikkyo is so far. But if you look at what I'm doing, I'm doing Ikkyo the way Chiba Sensei taught me. It's just like I've changed. Ikkyo hasn't changed. It's very funny.
Interesting.
It's very funny. It's very
Can I crack on with the questions, because I'm just looking at these questions and I've realized how many good ones we've got, if you don't mind, Roo. So there's one we have here. I would love to hear your thoughts on the ancient concept that permeates Japanese Budo. The soft overcomes the hard.
Mm. Well, it's true. That's what I have to say about it. It's true. It's true. Every time you practice Aikido, you should be letting something go, not reinforcing something. You should be expanding, I mean, contraction, expansion, but make sure you're expanding and not just contracting, you know? Softness, yes, especially in ukemi, If you're soft enough, you can find the opening and reverse it, which is really what we're doing in ukemi. We're not just giving up. So how do you know, how do you stay soft and still alive? That's what's really, like, water is soft, but it's alive, right? It's moving. It's not just like the only time that water is soft and not alive, it's when it's snow that's like melting. You know what I mean? And even then it's alive. It's becoming alive. But that's the only state of water. Like Bruce Lee, right? Be like water.
Be water.
But that means sometimes you're hard. Yeah, right. Sometimes you're ice, but then sometimes you're flowing water and sometimes you're steam. But my technique works through softness. If you're forcing, you don't have it. If you're forcing, you don't have it. And it's the same with the sword. If you're cutting with the sword properly when it feels effortless. When you just get the sword moving and the sword does it. And if your joints hurt, if it feels heavy, if your body's jerking after you cut, then that's a sign like something's not right. You need to find more softness. But I think softness, it's not just softness, it's also expansion, right? You're yielding, but you're not shrinking. That's my softness.
You can hear me typing away here because I want to share another quote, and I don't want to get this one wrong. Lao Tzu: men are born soft and supple, dead they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant, dead they're brittle and dry. Thus, whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. The hard and stiff will be broken. The soft and supple will prevail. And I like that. One of the things that we're often trying to in Gyodokan, we're often trying to get our students to understand is that if you have to apply all this, like a huge amount of external strength, then perhaps you haven't quite got the technique. There's something that you're missing there.
So yeah, this rigid mindset of like, I'm here and I need to apply it now, right? That's the rigidity. I think the way Chiba Sensei expressed it was adaptability. He said that one time we had to answer a question in like some essay, or we had a encounter group or a panel discussion. I think it was a panel discussion. And it was about, what does it mean to be martial? And his answer, it wasn't that you're strong, it wasn't that you win, it isn't that you're fast. He said it's adaptability. If you can adapt, that's the most essential quality for a martial artist, is to be able to adapt. So this is what you're telling your student. You're here and you're reefing down on it. You need to adapt. You need to move your body, change your line, relax, change the relationship you have, the relationship of your body to what you're trying to do. So adapt that, and then you will succeed, right? And then practice is just getting better at that.
As you're alluding to, it's like not just a physical. It's not only a physical thing. The pliability is an internal thing as well.
Absolutely.
Also,
And this, I think this. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that now I'm from a more, like, just with much less experience. I always saw the adaptability from the ukemi perspective only, and I never put too much focus on the adaptability from the uke perspective. And yeah, it's something I'm trying to be more aware of, and it's super interesting to think it's the same thing, but it's not the same thing. I don't know, but it's something to work on. Yeah.
Roo, we actually sent you this the list of the questions. I'm not sure if you have them in front of you, but I'm also aware that we've kept you for quite a long time. Oh, you have them there. Was there anything that were there any questions there or anything else there that you read that you particularly feel you would like to comment on or answer?
Well, there were two questions left that we haven't really addressed. One is self-confidence, humility versus experience. The more you train, the more you understand how little you know, how to balance all of that. And I think this is very much related to openness and adaptability. You can, in the same, I mean, as a sensei, I have to, the chief instructor of my dojo, I'm constantly negotiating this of, I have to be the person who knows, but at the same time, I have to be open to the fact that, okay, I'm trying to do this technique on this guy who weighs 300 pounds and it's not working. So I have to be humble enough to be like, okay, it's not working, I need to change, and not just try to insist and hurt him. I don't want to hurt anybody like that. You know, I need to, so like you have to be, yes, I have what I have. I have the toolbox that I have, and I'm proud of these tools that I've collected over 30 years. But also there are more tools out there that I don't know about. And there are more situations that I haven't encountered, and I have to be open to that. And you can't, you know, you can't get those tools unless you're like, yeah, I need this tool. That's a tool I need. You know, if you're like, I have all the tools, I don't need any more, then you're never going to get any more and you'll be stuck. So that's my answer to that question.
Sorry to interrupt you. We had a conversation with Catherine Lefebvre from Boston Aikikai, and we were talking about well, the subject of the whole episode was beginner's mind, and one of the topics was this landmark, I suppose, or this goalpost of Shodan, and how it's fairly frequently observed that sometimes people get to Shodan and then it's like, I know it all, I know everything. And it's really, and it's so damaging for people's practice, and you can really see them. Sometimes it's not even they stop, but they sometimes really decline. So I think it's a really damaging mindset to think that you know it, you have it. Well, I mean, I think even my teacher, our teacher, would never say that he knows it all, you know.
I hope not.
And he's someone with, oh gosh, I don't even know how many years of experience. Maybe Ivan knows. He can write it in the comments how.
A lot.
But anyway, a lot.
He was a Shodan when I just began, so he's
right.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, the last question was, what role, if any, does a dojo play in an atmosphere of deep political fear and division? Can it present itself in any way as a place where marginalized populations can train freely or be safe from persecution? And does it have such a responsibility? And I thought that this is, quite a timely question. That's probably not, maybe it's tangentially related to the topic of women in the dojo because we are, broadly speaking, a marginalized population. But I think, the saying, none of us is free until we all are free. But the converse is that you can't free anyone else until you're free. You have to get free in your mind, which means you have to do your best in the dojo to achieve this self-realization of your own freedom. And then we also, at the same time, have the obligation to make the dojo a place where everyone can have that realization, not just men, not just white people, right? Not just people with power in society. We have to figure out, and again, the dojo has to adapt. And this is what I'm constantly chewing on is how do I need to adapt my dojo to make it a place where other people can come in for self-realization? What do they need that I'm not giving, that they're not coming? And this is squarely on me. This is like where we need to be as a society, because I believe, as I said in the last time we talked, I believe Aikido is really an essential thing in these times where we're really polarized and we're not seeing each other as human beings. It's like just see each other as humans. How do we do that? And how do we give people the space to be human in the dojo? So absolutely, I think That is one of the great responsibilities of a dojo. And I think many of us are failing it. But we have to keep trying. And it begins with you. It begins with your how do you approach your practice? Are you approaching your practice as a way to show how great you are? Or are you approaching your practice as to find who you are? Who are you? How do you, as you said, I found this out about myself. I'm angry when these things happen, well, that's great intel. That's insight into who you are. And then, okay, how can I change that if I want to change that? So that kind of neru, that's shugyo, right? That's what shugyo is for getting, just like Zen, really just seeing yourself clearly, getting to that essential self, but working to make your place, your dojo, a place where everybody can do that. Yeah. Everybody.
It's interesting, I guess. A dojo is not separate from the world. The people in the dojo are of the world, aren't they? And I remember my teacher saying something about carrying your, if you don't keep anything from your training when you go out into the outside world, then what are you doing? What's going on if it's like you're a different person in the dojo. I mean, of course, in a dojo there's a certain, I'll share a nice quote with you, actually. Someone wrote here that this may be slightly tangential. So when I was a child, my first dojo in Poland had a newspaper clipping posted on the door that read, "Once you cross this doorway, you become a tiger." I still remember it over 30 years later, and often use this phrase when entering the dojo to adjust my mindset. And I quite like that. I'm veering slightly off topic here, but I suppose sometimes there's a danger of thinking that, like, in Aikido we're separate from the world, and there are no bad people in Aikido, and there are like and
that's a huge topic.
Sorry,
that's a huge topic, like that belief that you're
and I mean, and there was one actually, it wasn't just one, and I don't mean to brush over this, but Fran and I were saying that we don't really know enough about this to talk about it, but a few people wrote in and said some of the things they were disappointed about were, for example, their friends being expelled from the US Aikido Federation over questioning gender policy. And someone else also saying they witnessed senior UK teachers with harems at camps in the 1990s. And then I guess my question is, I mean, I don't know what my question is. It's just a reflection on, I guess it's to do with it's back to this responsibility thing, I suppose. And then there's the dojo, and then
it's a constant paradox. When you bow going into the dojo, you're leaving the world behind. And yet you're doing Aikido so that you can change in the world. We put our teachers on pedestals, but often our teachers have feet of heavy clay. And how do we deal with that? How do we deal with a teacher who creates a culture of harassment and victimization in the dojo? And I will tell you from experience, sometimes addressing it head on is the worst thing you can do, because it puts it under the rug, is very, very difficult, very, very difficult. But I think we, again, this is that openness and adaptability of, like, the soft overcomes the hard. So yes, a policy that will not, an organization that will not allow its policies to be questioned is hard and will be overcome by softness. I think that is a self-defeating policy. I think these kinds of things come out of fear and insecurity, and like a deep-rooted fear of being wrong and being questioned. And I've run into that in myself. I've run into that in my own organization, questioning things around racial equity. Just straight out rejection. You're calling me a racist. I don't want to look at this. It's like, okay, that's really interesting. But sometimes you meet it head on, and you can't get anywhere. You don't. So we have to find like creative ways, maybe underground ways to manage these things that are undeniable, these paradoxes in our training. This is a beautiful art. It's a fantastic art, and it also is home to some really shitty people who will bully people and victimize people and abuse people. Absolutely. My own teacher was accused of it. I didn't personally experience it with him, but you know, I know there are people who look at me and be like, what a hypocrite, staying with that guy who did all these bad things, right? And how do you get what you want? Who is the pure white leader on the road to heaven? You know, nobody. Who can lead you down your path, and how can you help as many people as you can in this life? I don't know. Sometimes it's like it's very, you know, I can't make excuses for myself or make excuses for anybody, but I think it's very easy to throw stones, and we're all in a big old glass house, and rather than throwing stones, let's get together and try to figure this out. And that's, I will say, one of the reasons I appreciate you guys so much is because I feel like this is, you know, nemawashi, nemawashi, you're chewing the roots around the tree. You're not trying to pull the tree up and take up all the soil with it. You're like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about these things, you know, and we can just talk about them. And maybe, you know, I think it's very, it can be very destructive and hurtful. But at the same time, things that have been destructive and hurtful need to be addressed, or they continue. So, you know, another paradox. How do we do it? I have no idea. I'm just bumbling down the road, obviously. But let's work together.
One of the words in the question was about responsibility, like whose responsibility is it? In regards to the question, in the context of this question, it was what role does a dojo play in an atmosphere of deep political fear and division? But coming back to this thing of responsibility, and of course, the whole topic of our interview has been about, well, I suppose, gender equality in training. Whose responsibility is it to address these things? I had an interesting request last year. Someone wrote to me and asked me, you know, I'm trying to get, it was a guy, I'm trying to get a seminar together to encourage like women and children into Aikido. And it was very much like, you know, you're basically the only woman, I guess, in England. He's like, you're the only woman kind of promoting Aikido online. And the feeling was like, you got to do it, you know, you got to do it. And I'll share my response. I mean, it was well meaning. Like he's trying to do something different. But he had alluded to the fact that it wasn't easy to get other people on board. And he'd held a seminar the previous year, and it was with all the senior teachers, all men. And so I said to him, look, for personal reasons, I'm not gonna teach at the seminars, but thank you. And I said, how about, I have an idea. You know, you could ask the teachers that taught at your seminar last year to put forward some of their female students to teach the seminars. And if they don't have any, then maybe it's a good opportunity to ask, oh, why don't I? Or if they do, or why don't they want to teach? Because I think, and I also said that, you know, seminars, Aikido seminars are not always spaces where women have like necessarily felt welcome. They can be quite challenging. And so it's difficult to put yourself forward. But at the same time, that thing of that responsibility, it kind of, I was like, is it my responsibility? And I remember talking to Fran about it, and you know, and I think what Fran had basically said to me was like, you're doing your bit, you know. And yeah, I don't know, I just wanted to share that this whose responsibility is it?
Yeah, I think, you know, I look at a lot of high level women instructors, and I feel like an awful lot is put on them. I mean, I think Okamoto Sensei is like a big example. You know, like she basically represents women in Aikido. What a heavy burden. You know, I don't want to ask anything of her ever again. You know, just being who she is and doing what she's done is enough.
Yeah.
Is enough for 2 lifetimes, I think. And we're all, you know, but at the same time, we're all standing on the shoulders of women who've gone before us. I'm very conscious of the Shihan and Birenkai who basically taught Shiba Sensei that women were human, because my understanding is when he came from Japan, he was not a beaming, shining beacon of equity, you know, and there were some very strong women like Coral Crane Sensei, Gloria Nomura Sensei, Christina Varjan Sensei, and many, many others who were just like, they put up with him and called him on his shit, and basically they made the way for people like me to go forward, and we need to acknowledge that the work they've done and not put a lot more on them. And you guys are doing the same thing. You guys are like, we're forging a path right ahead of, and so that can be enough. And I think if there's something that you feel called to do that feels not like a burden but a joy, then you do that. But anytime something comes at you that is like, oh, this is a burden, nah, fuck it, don't bother. If somebody else can, you know, like this guy he could get creative, like you said, you know, like don't put, it's kind of like a certain organization that is like, you know, oh, just, you know, okay, let's not go there, but you know what I'm saying, right? It's like, you guys could take a little initiative. There could be, you know, a push to have more focus on female instructors in Japan and within Aikikai Hombu Dojo, even, you know, if you really want to make strides for equity in women in Aikido, we could have that kind of thing. And I don't see it. So I'm not going to support you. I'm not here to hold up your sky. You know, I got my own sky to hold up. So, and we should stop talking about that. I'm sorry. Get myself in trouble.
Wow. Thank you so much. I mean, this has been, again, another really enjoyable discussion. Fran, was there anything that you, before we finish, we had so many interesting anecdotes in, and of course, like I don't want to say we've been focusing on the negative, because I don't feel like it's been a negative discussion. But I'm sorry.
No, we're focusing on the positive, and I'm going there. Sorry,
Not blaming others.
I'm not blaming others.
So, in terms of, so I just yeah. So we wanted to finish with some positive anecdotes, I suppose, that people have shared with us, and kind of remind us of some of the reasons why people practice, and they were really nice to read. And I wanted to share some. So we asked people, please share with us some memorable moments, positive or negative. And someone responded that a positive memorable experience is when they discover something new about themselves on the mat. So, for example, why they have certain resistances and fears, why they tend to overthink rather than be more intuitive, how they deal with injury. A lot comes up on the mat when I'm not in my comfort zone, and there's a certain discomfort but also joy to it all, which draws me to the mat. And I can identify with that. And then some other people shared, and some other people shared some examples, which I think are a similar thing. We actually shared some of these on our Instagram page. A kendoka said, the first time I shouted my loudest kiai in kendo, everyone around me was impressed, and I realized that I could use it during practice to release past struggles and painful memories, to confront them, fight them, and eliminate them from my mind. This way I could move forward in life with strength. And yeah, I liked that one. I wanted to share that one.
Oh man, we could talk for a lot about kiai. Yeah, kiai is great. A good kiai, good, like real kiai. Oh, so much power.
Maybe perhaps that's a good topic for another episode. Do you want to hear some more?
Yeah. Please.
So where are we? Oh goodness, where's it gone? This is a nice one. We trained at a camp where the dojo was inside a building, but all of the doors and big windows were open. 2 swallows flew in and played, soaring over our heads while we listened to Sensei's explanation. Then the 2 swallows sat with us as if they were listening to, loudly discussing something.
Oh,
That's
very beautiful.
That's
so
awesome.
cute. I love it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and there were a couple more as well. Let me have a look. Ah, this is kind of a funny one. I remember having a particularly difficult training session where I couldn't figure anything out and was completely out of sync mentally and physically. And and I had a training partner who was another beginner, and he was losing patience and being obviously annoyed, tense, and forceful, which made her even more tense. And she felt she was training worse because as a result of it. Then he got paired up with one of the seniors who I think had noticed and visibly had a bit of a rough time himself. So I think that was a kind of what do they say? Instant karma, I think, is
Yep.
what people say. Um, and
The screen door
there
of
was one
reality
more.
is what I like to
A
call
nice
it.
one from here we go. Another one from Japan, actually. I remember when we trained in the same. So this was the same as the dojo with the swallows. I also remember when we trained in the same dojo during the rain and lightning flashed. My Japanese teammates told me that when Japanese people hear lightning, they cover their navels with their hands so the lightning doesn't enter it. I liked that one. So yeah, these
Yeah.
were just a few of some really really nice anecdotes that people have sent in. So, and we will share some more on our page as well. Um,
Mm.
so we've
Well,
covered so
what
much.
about, yeah, what about you guys? Do you guys have an especially good memory of training? I'm curious to hear if you have your own of like some special moment.
Oh,
I have one, and I think so. It was when when I had my shodan. I didn't know I was having my shodan, and uh, I remember that it started with suwariwasa, and I think it was like 45 minutes of suwariwasa, and maybe it was less, but it felt like an eternity. And and sensei paired me like with, well, I was with one of our seniors, like who's super tall and strong, and also with Cathy, and they were beating me up, and I was, why are they treating me like this? Like, what did I do? What's happening? And then he put us in the middle with Cathy, and and the and then I thought like, maybe this is a mock test for in preparation for the shodan. Maybe I said, yeah, okay, let's continue, because also they were being so intense that it was like, what's happening? What's happening? But then at one point, I sort of uh, stopped stopped thinking basically, and I remember the feeling of like not having that I have to do this and then I have to do that and then I have to do this and then that. It was like, in anime or in cartoons, like when the one person is going to attack and then you know exactly where you have to go. And maybe from the outside it didn't look pretty or anything, but it felt like I I was just where I had to be in the moment where it had to happen. And I it's so like I can't create that feeling yet, basically, and I don't know if it's possible. I cannot recreate that, but if I got to a place where I could, like it would be super cool. It felt really great, like
Nice.
soaring. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's nice.
When it's more than the sum of its parts, right? Like it's, it's this plus this, but it's this. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Lovely.
I I don't know if I can think of I don't know I can't think of one off the top of my head. I'll have to think about it
Mhm.
and tell you. I guess when you were saying that, Fran, I do identify with that feeling of like everything's just um
Happening
it's
in
like
the right
you're just
time.
moving and it's there, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're just so in tune with what you're doing, and there have been moments where I've gotten into this state where it's almost like the gap between thinking and doing is so like this.
Nothing. Yeah,
Flow state.
exactly.
Yeah, the flow state. Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
And that's those moments are pretty special, I think. Yeah. How about you, Roo?
I have so many good moments of training, you know. I have so many good memories of training. It's hard, honestly, hard to choose. I think it's like, especially now, because I can't take ukemi like I used to, but taking ukemi was always my favorite thing, you know. And those times when a teacher would throw you and you just felt like they weren't doing something to you, you're part of something, you know, and you're flying. Maybe not, you know, not flying, but you're like, it's effortless. When a really good teacher throws you, taking ukemi, if you're just connected and you're there and you're just trying to stay there, there's no effort. It's just, and it's this beautiful thing. And then sometimes you'll have a really good partner, or a partner who just really vibes with you. I mean, we all have different partners we're good with, and there were a few people at Hombu Dojo who I just loved training with. And you know, we just go and we would just go sweat and work out, but it never felt arduous, you know. It was just joy. And I think one of the most wonderful things about Aikido is it does allow us to find that joy, you know, that flow, that like I hear, and especially because it's not just us, it's not like a single kata practice the way some other arts are. It's two people participating in making this thing, you know. That's to me why it's really beautiful. It's really fun, really satisfying.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. I spoke to Fran before this, and I said, you know, roughly how long should we aim for? And she said maybe about an hour. And I actually thought, you know what, we've been doing this a while now. It's definitely not going to be an hour. But
Is it an hour?
We've actually kept you for nearly 2 hours.
I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
I just hope you don't have anywhere to go, because it's the evening for us. So, but yeah, I just want to thank you so much for your time, because you know, you've spoken to us once before, and actually several people said, oh, you should get Roo Sensei back. So we're really grateful that you came and joined us again.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you both so much. So yeah, keep it up.
Before we finish, actually, Fran, would you like to, we should have said this right at the beginning, actually, but would you like to just let people know about our fundraising page?
Oh, yes. Oh, that's very important.
We're so bad at this, honestly. We should have said this right at the start.
Yes. Now, this is so basically this work that Cathy and I do is we do it in our free time, aside from our jobs and our training. Cathy does most of the heavy lifting of editing and fixing the sound and promotions and all that, and then we do the creative part together. And it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of work, and we want to keep it in the good quality it's been so far, and improve it if possible. So we have created a Ko-fi account. It's kofi.com, and it's linked in our link tree in our bio, in my perspective. And there you can donate the cost of one coffee, or as many coffees as you want to donate. So we can pay for the premium subscription in StreamYard, which is the platform that we use to record the episode. So yeah, if you can go to our Instagram profile, then click on the link tree, and there you will see the link to the fundraiser in Ko-fi, and give us a donation. And of course, what's more important than the donation is listen to the episodes, because the more views we get, the more chances we have to get more opportunities to continue developing it. So thank you so much.
You've been listening to My Perspective, where women talk Budo.